couple of videos ago I expressed concern at the beginning of the video that I looked a bit like a horse girl, and now I've just committed to the aesthetic. Got myself a little rodeo waistcoat and it says lazy on the back, so it's just, honestly, I've never seen anything more me in my life. I actually sat down to film this video last night at like 2 AM so that I could get it up on my usual day at my usual upload time, and I just looked like shit and I wasn't coherent. So today I'm going all out. I'm actually committing. I'm making good quality videos and I hope you enjoy it. So today I want to do the anti-TBR tag, and the aim of this tag is to kind of talk about books that I'm not interested in reading or certain authors that I'm not interested in anymore. And this tag blew up quite a while ago, so I'm quite late with it, and as usual no one has tagged me. Like, if I'm doing a tag, just assume that no one's tagged me, because I'm not social enough to be like well known and be tagged, but I'm also like too lonely to not do the tag and feel left out. You know, just vibing in the middle. But yeah, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it because I have like a severe fear of missing out. So most popular hyped books I usually just will read or will be open to reading. There's not many books that I think I would never ever read that. And when I think about genres I've enjoyed, like I've enjoyed books across the board, you know, definitely genres I read more than others, but there isn't a genre that I'd be like, no, I would never read that, because so much of what I love about books can be down to like writing style, mood, plot, characters. Like, even if the genre isn't what I usually go for, if the premise jumps out at me, usually I will read it. And like I said, I have a severe fear of missing out, so if everyone's hyping up a book and like a lot of people are saying it's good, like, why not try it? It's probably popular for a reason, you know? I always use the analogy that like if you were choosing a place to eat out, like for dinner, would you go to a restaurant that has like nobody sat in it, or would you go to a restaurant that's really busy and has like a queue outside the door? Like, one probably is really amazing, that's why people want to go there, and one is probably not so amazing. So that's the analogy that I use. Obviously there's exceptions. I've not enjoyed every single popular book that I've read, but anyway, yeah. That was a very long preamble to say I didn't think I was going to do the video, but we're doing it anyway because I came up with some answers, so what was the point of that? And anyway, this tag was created by Nicole and her books, and I will leave her channel linked in the description. So the first question of this tag is, name a popular book that everyone loves that you have no interest in. And for this one I have to go with probably A Court of Silver Flames. And I don't really have specific beef with this book, it's just that it's been in my mind recently because I've seen lots and lots of reading vlogs pop up for it because it's just come out, and lots of rave reviews, and I fell off of the ACOTAR series a while ago. I have read all of the books that are, well, not all of the books that are out. I read the first three, what we thought was going to be the trilogy, and then it turns out there's more. But I remember being quite underwhelmed by the last book, which was A Court of Wings and Ruin, I believe. I just felt quite underwhelmed by that, so I didn't really have a thirst to carry on, and obviously time has passed, a lot of time has passed since I read it, and I just don't have the memory and the mental capacity to dive into this new one. And also they changed the covers, and if you've seen the most popular video on my channel, which is just me ranting about the fact that my Shadowhunter books don't match each other and they have different covers, I don't want to buy a book that doesn't match the ones I already have, and that's a really shallow reason for not wanting to read it. But also I don't remember anything about the books, and also, you know? And the next question of the tag is a classic book or author you don't have an interest in. Honestly, I'm not the best at reading classics, so you could just say literally any classic author or book and I'd probably be like, yeah, I don't really want to read that. But the sort of like staples that came to mind, because I did a quick Google of like the classic authors, and most of them I don't really have that much of an interest in, but there'll be the odd one I'll like read, maybe consider reading one book from. But the authors that kind of kept coming up that I just don't see myself reaching for their books are probably Arthur Conan Doyle. I'm sorry, I just think that obviously he's probably written other stuff, but Sherlock is the main thing. And I just don't think I need to read Sherlock. Like, I've seen it in so many iterations, like throughout history and time. Like, I've seen the show and the movies and the things that it has inspired. I find this a lot with Stephen King as well. It's like Stephen King did a lot of groundbreaking work in the horror genre, like establishing tropes, and because those tropes are so foundational to the genre, lots of authors have then riffed on those tropes later on, and I find that I've read a lot of those books, so then when I go back to like the original text, it doesn't seem as groundbreaking or interesting, because I've just been exposed to so much of that came after it. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, I don't see myself reaching for an Arthur Conan Doyle book. Similarly, Tolkien, and I'm gonna get like absolutely lambasted by my friend Rowan, who is a Tolkien stan. I tried to read Lord of the Rings many moons ago when I was like 15, 16 maybe. I didn't get on with it. I stopped at the Council of Elrond. I enjoyed the films, but also I think I've only seen the films once, like each. You know, I binged them when I got the box set, and I don't think I've returned to that world since. But I would like to. I'd return to the films. I just don't really see myself reaching for the book. I know it's a bit of a cliche, and there are lots of people that love both, but there was like a sort of made-up rivalry between Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, like as they were both big fantasy epics that were coming out at similar times. And I feel like people kind of are firmly more in one camp than the other, and I was definitely a Harry Potter kid. Not that I don't like Lord of the Rings, I just don't see myself delving into that world necessarily, but I could be wrong. The next question is an author whose books you have no interest in reading. And for this one, I've written down Brandon Sanderson, simply because that is the only author that I hear talked about a lot that I, one, haven't read anything from, and two, I'm probably quite intimidated by. I actually own a Brandon Sanderson book because a friend really like hyped it up to me a couple of years ago, and it was a standalone, so I felt like I could buy it, and that was like a good one to start with. But then I've also heard a lot of controversy about him and his sort of views on, you know, LGBT rights and all of that stuff, because I think he's quite religious, and so I just don't really think I'm gonna be taking the plunge. I just don't really see it happening because I'm quite daunted by not only the books but also like the idea of supporting someone that, you know, doesn't support LGBT rights. That's not cool. So I don't know. If you know more about it, please let me know, because I hear a lot of hype around his books and I just don't know if that's what I want to be doing. And the next question is a problematic author you have no interest in, which is kind of like, I mean, if you consider Brandon Sanderson problematic, I kind of already answered that. But also, obviously, J.K. Rowling. I still engage with Harry Potter in a way that doesn't financially support her, so I can read the books that I already own, I can watch the DVDs that I already own, but I won't be like buying any new official HP merch in the future because I just don't I don't vibe with her being a TERF. Stephanie Meyer as well. I made a whole video about why I wouldn't buy Midnight Sun, and that got some interesting responses. So I'll leave that in the description if you haven't watched it yet, but please be nice to me on that video because there are a lot of people who weren't, so. And another one I'm gonna add, I know I only was supposed to say one, but I'm gonna add in Ernest Cline, because wow, he sucks. He really sucks. Not only is Ready Player One like a really gross glorification of toxic masculinity and toxic gatekeeperiness in like fandom, it's also just not a very good book. Like when I first read it, I thought it was like really fun and adventurous, blah blah blah. But like the more I've thought about it and the more that I've read about it, and then I saw the film, and it just felt like fan service and gatekeepery and like wink wink nudge nudge, you're really intelligent if you get all these references, and I just don't like that. It just feels smarmy to me, and the fact that all of his books after that have kind of gone in the same vein, like repurposing stuff that he loves and he's only writing it for people who also love that thing, it just feels like a very niche group that like if you're not already in the group, like don't even bother trying to get in. And also he's just been very shit. Like I think his new book Ready Player 2, the sequel, had some quite gross chapters. So obviously there's like the internet world of Oasis, and there's some weird stuff in there about like trying to be pro gender fluidity and like having sex with like all genders, but the inner monologue of the main character is very much like, oh, I didn't understand trans people until I had sex with one. And that's just really gross. Like, it's just disgusting. Like, oh, I didn't respect your right to exist until you offered me a sexual service. It just came off completely wrong. And Lindsay Ellis wrote a really thorough like coherent thread on like why this element of the book was problematic and why it didn't work for her. And then he filed like a DMCA claim against her and just like tried to get her to take everything down and was like bullying people who were supporting it. And that's just gross. Like, I'm sorry, if you can't take critique, you shouldn't be an author, especially when that critique is definitely valid. So just all round gross vibes, and the book isn't even well written, so like what is the point, you know? And the next question is an author you've read and decided their books are not for you. I'm gonna go with Amanda Lovelace because I don't vibe with this poetry. I'm gonna get told off for doing that. On Charlotte's lovely birthday live stream, which we just did a couple of days ago, I talked a little bit about this as being my controversial bookish opinion because I see a lot of love for these poetry books, a lot of love for these books in the booktube community, and a lot of people say that they have helped them, and that's completely valid. Like, if you like these books, I don't hate you, you're free to like what you like. I just feel like Amanda Lovelace gets given a lot of credit for doing not very much with the genre. Like, I feel like there should be a baseline for what sort of qualifies as poetry in terms of using rhythm and visual language and structure and communicating a feeling. Whereas there are certain poems in this book, and I think one that really stuck out to me that was literally just fuck rape culture. Like, that was the whole thing. And while that's, you know, a sentiment that no one can disagree with, it doesn't qualify as a poem. Spacing a sentence on a page does not a poem make, you know? And that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I think anyone who sort of critiques the poetry, people get angry about it because they say, oh, Amanda's writing about like really personal things, she's writing about feminism, she's writing about, you know, rape and abuse, and it's her personal expression and therefore you can't critique it, and like that's really horrible to say that it's bad when it's just, it's so raw and it's so personal. And I don't get that critique because she is publishing a book which she is asking people to pay for, and so if you have bought something, I think you have a right to critique it because you have spent your hard-earned money on a product, on a thing of value, and if that doesn't deliver, you have a right to express that opinion. And I just think it's really bad look when authors go after people that have given them bad reviews because it's not for you. Like, the critique, like, Goodreads is not for authors, and the reviewer space should not be infiltrated by authors. I just think that's a very bad look when that goes down, and I don't like the books, and I'm not gonna read them. Potentially another one for this is J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, because I read Illuminae a while back, which I think I enjoyed at the time, but I had no motivation to carry on the series. And then I recently read Aurora Rising, also by both of them, which just didn't do it for me. So I feel a bit reluctant to kind of pick up any of their other books because I've tried to, and neither of them have been like the 5-star reads that they were for everybody else. And the next one is a genre you have no interest in, which is hard to answer because, like I said, I've read from lots of genres. Like, I've read a couple of horror novels, not many, a couple of sci-fi novels, not many, but I have enjoyed books in those genres, so I wouldn't write a genre off completely. I'd say the one that I'm probably least likely to reach for is maybe high fantasy, just because I do get quite scared, although I read Priory of the Orange Tree and I enjoyed that one, so I don't know if that classifies quite as high fantasy because it's a standalone, so it was a bit less intimidating for me. But you know, those series that have like 20 books and they're all like the size of my head, I just don't really see myself reaching for those. But yeah, I will say high fantasy, with the caveat that I have enjoyed fantasy, and if it's like pitched to me in a certain way, I probably would reach for it if I wasn't a scaredy cat. The next question is a book you've bought but will never read. Preferably none. Like, I'm hoping there's not an answer for this because I have a very huge TBR pile, and I hope that I get to them all because obviously at some point I wanted to read all of them. But I think the books that sort of stay on my TBR the longest is books that I buy that I feel I should read but don't really want to. So a couple of years ago I bought these two beautiful hardbacks of Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, and they have remained untouched for about 7-8 years. So I always say to myself I'll get to them, but we'll see. The next question is a series you have no interest in or a series that you DNF'd. I never like intentionally DNF things because I I'm like a collector completionist. Like, I don't like giving up on things. I'm very stubborn. I say that, like, I mean, I always abandon like my own personal projects, but in terms of like reading and watching stuff, I don't like to not finish things. But the series that I have sort of fallen off the wagon a bit is the Throne of Glass series. I think I've read the first 5 books in that series, as well as the like companion novel of like short stories, and I really enjoyed those books, but they just got longer and longer and longer and longer as the series went on, and then there was like a year gap where I had to wait for the last book, and I just forgot all of the details in that year gap, so I never picked up the last book, and now more years have passed and my memory has got worse and worse and worse, and I like, if I picked up the last book now, it would just be answering questions that I don't have, and it would just raise more questions at this point, you know? So I don't know if I see myself going back to it, but it is such a pity to like get so far into a series. I think I got to book 5 and like not finish it. That would be really annoying. And like I said, I never intentionally DNF'd it because it wasn't good or I didn't enjoy it. There was time in between and I fell off the wagon and I forgot what was happening. So never say never, but probably, maybe not, I don't know. And also for this I'll add in Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, which is really sad because I loved the first book. I loved the design of it, or it gave me all the Tim Burton vibes, which is funny because he directed the film. But there's now like 6 of them and I just had no idea that they just kept going. I think at the time I knew there was a sequel coming, but it just fell off my radar, and now I don't know if I remember enough about the first book or care enough about the characters to seek out the rest of the series. So like I said, neither of them are intentional DNS, but they're just ones that I have not had the urge to reach for at all in like the 5+ years it's been. So it's sort of unlikely that I'll reach for them in the future. And the last question is a new release you have no interest in reading. And the one that springs to mind is obviously Midnight Sun. I did a whole video about why I'm not going to buy that. Also like Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I just don't have an interest. Like I still get a lot of happy nostalgia from Twilight and from the Hunger Games. I just don't feel the need to read more in that universe. Like it's a time that has passed for me, which is weird because I still engage with the Mortal Instruments and like Percy Jackson. So some things I've kept from that era of my life of like YA dystopian, but some things I just don't feel a need to return to, which is fine. But yeah, so I hope I've not gravely offended anybody. I mean, I'm sure we don't need a disclaimer because, you know, BookTube is full of just people stating their opinions, but this is all just my opinion, and if you love any of the books that I've mentioned in this video, that's fine. I don't take it personally. You can like what you like and I can like what I like. And also take all of my answer with a pinch of salt because, like I said, I have extreme fear of missing out, so don't be surprised if you see me picking up some of these books in the future because I'm curious. What can I say? I don't like being left out of things. So if there are people that really start raving about certain books in this video, I might do a slow crawl of shame and buy them and read them. So yeah, thanks so much for watching this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Bye.